Playing pool?
Yeah. He's not the only ones that are doing that.
All
All right, we'll close the door. Keep the people out of here. All right, we gotta have power steering. You ever drive a vehicle that didn't have power steering?
All the time.
All right, what about one of these vehicles, like a mid-2000s Chevy Cobalt or Pontiac G6 had electric power steering? And sometimes the electric power steering unit on those things will fail, and suddenly, without warning, you lose your power steering, and it's hard to steer. You know, the electric power steering still got a hookup, but if you look under the hood of an electric power steering vehicle, you're just gonna see a rack down there, but you're not gonna see any hydraulic lines or anything. And you see that thing up there behind you? On the, see that, right there on the corner, right there, see that thing? No, down, that's right, that, right there. Got your hand on it. Hold that up. That is the electric power steering module and actuator assembly for a 2005 Cobalt. And it cost about $500.
Crap, hunk of junk.
Yeah. And so, but the thing about it is, if you're driving that car and if the steering's coming and going without warning,
You said just for that part is $500?
yeah, it's $500 for that part. And that's when we buy it and put it on here, okay? And that's one we had to change out. Anyway, all right, so, I want to tap the thing again here. For some reason, my presenter's not working right. Now, when we don't have the power steering, this right here is Enterprise Paint and Industrial. Now, it used to be the Piggly Wiggly. And whenever you pull up in here, you pull straight into the parking place. Well, my old aunt, her power steering had gone out on her Buick, and she angled it across to it in parking places. And so the guy pulled up there and he said, "Why don't you just take 3 parking places like you was at?" And she goes, "No, I think those 2 I have will do me just fine." You know, she was not going to be pushed around by that guy. She told me, she said, that really made me mad when he said that, because she couldn't help it. You know, she just, you know, when you're driving a big long car and the power steering is going out. All right, so I went back in, when I was working at the Lincoln Mercury place, I drew a ticket on a Mustang. This was in 1984, and I was working on a Mustang that was like an early 70s model. You know, the Gone in 60 Seconds movie, the first one from 74, it was one of those Mustangs. And I said, the power steering, I said, I just rebuild this thing. So it had power, you know, I took that thing all apart. Now, taking the part with all these recirculating balls, that ain't a big deal. I mean, that's, you know, I used to actually, in steering and suspension, have students do that as an exercise. Put this thing on a bench and take it all apart, get all those balls out of there and just tear the thing all to pieces and put it all back together. However, there's some adjustments that has to be made as it relates to this power steering. Now, what it does with the power steering, this chamber right here, it's got a seal around it, that whenever you turn the steering wheel, this spool valve moves back and forth, and it directs pressure to here or to here to help you with the steering. And the problem that I had with that was when I took it apart and put it back together, there was an adjustment on one end of it. It didn't seem to me like it was rocket science. When I put it back together, filled it up with fluid, cranked it up, it turned the wheels all the way one way. And there was nothing I could do to adjust it and fix that. Now, it might have just been that the spool valve was bad or whatever, but anyway, we got one from the salvage yard and put on there to, you know, get our fat out of the fire on that. Now, you might notice this kind of steering right here is what they call parallelogram steering, because it's got a pitman arm right here. This right here is not even accurate. It's usually about the same angle as that pitman arm, but you got an Adler arm here, you got a pitman arm there. The pitman arm, you got a gearbox, is right here, and as you turn that wheel, and this gear goes back and forth, that pitman arm goes back and forth up here, and this is what you call a center link. And now they don't even, the tie rods, basically this is a center link, I'm sorry, and the tie rods are over here on each side. You know how you guys adjusted the toe on that one this morning? You were basically lengthening and shortening these rods right here. And so this goes back and forth. Now, when we get into steering angles, we're going to talk about toe out on turns, we're going to talk about steering axis inclination, we're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff. We're not going to cover that today. We're basically going to talk about power steering. All right. Okay, this was a car like that one I was working on and all that. So that's when it would go back. You know, you couldn't force it back to the center with the engine running because you know there's something wrong with the spool. You know, you kind of got to know how that works. Well, rack and pinion steering is a simpler way to transmit turning effort. Most of your vehicles now, it's very rare to find a steering box on even pickups and big SUVs. Like if you've got Tahoes and stuff, you know, that like you see the newer ones, they'll have a steering rack on them. And it's also really pretty expensive. There was a lady that brought her 2007 Tahoe over here, and it was, she wanted, or maybe a Suburban, anyway, the steering rack, she had taken it to another shop, and they were like $700 to replace the steering rack, so we put one up for $250. We basically got one from the parts store, and she worked for the school, so she qualified to have work done, you know, so all that kind of, I don't want to undercut the shops, but, you know, it is what it is, you know, somebody doesn't have the money, and they got us available to them, sometimes we help them out. Okay, what you got right here, this is a simplified version of it, although it's not just straight gears like this. You might notice this has got curved gears, and the teeth on this thing actually change, because what you don't want to do is you don't want it, whenever you turn to a certain angle, to turn faster. You know what I mean? You basically want it to turn the same speed, and you have to set the gears up on that rack the same way. Now you see this hydraulic piston here, and these lines? When you turn this wheel, the power steering pump pressure is delivered to this side of the piston to help you turn it one way, and to the other side of the piston to help it turn the other way. There's seals around this that aren't supposed to leak, and these accordion boots right here aren't ever supposed to have any oil in them. A lot of times they'll have a little pipe going from boot to boot so that it will carry air back and forth. Did you notice that on one that you were working on? Okay.
Last two I did, or three I did,
Yeah.
last semester, I got that pipe.
Yeah.
Air.
But anyway, the old recirculating ball units have got more steering parts that can fail. The inner tie rod ends on these, the ones that screw onto the end of that rack, they can fail and have slop in them, and I used to have one of those laying over there somewhere. I don't know where it is
They'll
now.
ever go to remove one and do the electrical connector at the top.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, because you'll get a chance to pull one of those off and put it back on. You did steering and suspension last semester. All right, you got hydraulic pressure, you gotta have hydraulic pressure. And this particular thing, this is not exactly like it, but that's a vane type pump. And hydraulic power steering pumps come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Some of them have a reservoir built on, some of them have a remote reservoir like that. The remote reservoir's got a built-in screen most people don't know about. We're gonna talk about that a little bit more later. But one way or another, I was gonna tell a brief little story here. When I was working one time at a truck shop in the 80s, over there in the mid-80s, they brought this guy, the Fort Rucker had bought a brand new bucket truck. It was one of these trucks that, you know, they get in the bucket and they raise it up and they work on stuff up high and all that kind of stuff. It was a brand spanking new one, and the hydraulics didn't work on it. You know, they couldn't raise the bucket or nothing. It had oil in it and all, but it wouldn't work. But the thing about it is, I had worked back from 78 to 80 to the early 80s over and down in Texas, and I did a lot of work on forklifts and hydraulic stuff and all. And the pump that they had on that thing was just like the pump that I'd seen on them forklifts. And I'd worked a lot on them pumps on them forklifts. And when I got up under there and I looked at that pump and I saw the mark on the side of the little part that's got the veins in it, you know, it's like a vein housing part of it. And I had to draw you a picture. I looked at it and I looked at where the return line was and where the pressure line was. And I told the guy I was working for, I said, that pump's put together backwards. That's why it won't work. And he said, well, can you fix it? And I said, yeah. So I took it apart and I put it together the right way and it started working like a champ. But this is the problem. If I had not seen those, and if I hadn't worked on them before, I wouldn't have a clue. See what I mean? So every little bit of experience you can gather, you need to store it away. You know, I used to know a guy named Steve Hieronymus, and every time they were doing something like putting new cables on a crane or doing something that breaks on a tractor trailer, he would always hang around and watch. He was a truck driver. He was a young fellow though. He'd always hang around and watch to make sure that he understood what they were doing, so he would store that information. If you're bored with something, that doesn't mean you don't need to pay attention to what's going on, because everything that you learn is going to benefit you somewhere farther down the line. All right, the power steering system's got the pressure line, return line. There might be a cooler. Usually they'll either have a cooler that's got fins, or they'll, the return line, because you already put this thing through pressure, you've already given it all its work, and if it comes out of there, they basically want to cool it back off. They'll either have it going through fins, or they'll have just a really long line. It looks like it's totally unnecessary. And then it'll go way around here, and it'll come back to the, power steering. So this one here doesn't have a lot of pressure on it, but this one right here does. The power steering pressure line's got a pretty good bit of pressure on it. And so these vanes, the way that vane works, is whenever it throws them vanes out against there, it grabs some of that oil, and once it comes in and gets it, once that vane gets right here, that oil can't do anything except gets compressed and you can't really compress fluid, but you can basically squeeze that and put pressure on it and let it go out to the pressure hose fitting. Now this is a sort of a screwball drawing of the relief valve, which is actually a flow control valve, and it'll actually be over here usually, it won't be back over there, but it acts as a pressure relief valve. All right, the flow control valve looks like this. This is the place where your pressure line comes off your pump. If you take the pressure line off, you know, there's a fitting still screwed into the pump. You take that fitting that's screwed out of the pump, and you'll see the flow control valve right here. And like I say, it's kind of like a relief valve on an engine oil pump system. But it's basically wants the pressure to be more or less constant regardless of pump speed. Now, you know how much pressure does a power steering pump put up, you know, about? I mean, it's a hydraulic pump, and it's positive displacement, but it does have positive displacement, but it does have this relief valve to keep the pressure output more or less constant. About 1,200 to 1,500 pounds is what it puts out. Now, when we're talking about brakes, I'm going to remind you guys, I'm going to say this right now, I'm going to remind you later, inside the brake lines on your car, when you hit the brake good and hard, you got 2,000 pounds of pressure inside those lines. That's why the lines are so little, because your 2,000 pounds is PSI, and you don't need a lot of SI when you've got 2,000 pounds of P. You know what I'm saying? You get where I'm going with that? All right, but anyway, and there you go. A handling the low-speed steering maneuvers are better whenever you got those. Now this right here is basically the way your old, you know, this thing works right here. High pressure supply, high pressure return. Basically, it's going to help it go back and forth. That's a sort of a sloppy drawing up there. I just kind of threw it up there because it was, but it has to know which way you're wanting to turn. The electric power steering is the same way. It's basically got a torque sensor, so it can tell which way you're turning the wheel and how fast, so it'll know how much help you need. You got me? And a lot, we don't think about that. Really, if you engineered something, if somebody told you they wanted you to engineer a power steering system. Now the forklifts I worked on would have a big long piston that was hooked to the steering, and it had a little spool valve in there. That a spool valve being kind of like what you get in the valve body in the transmission. You move it back and forth, it redirects the fluid. And whenever you would turn it one way, it would move that spool valve and start driving that piston to help you turn them, because the counterweight on the forklift weighed like 3,000 pounds. And if you didn't have power steering, you weren't even going to turn the wheel, even though it was a mechanical hookup. But it needs to know which way help needs to be directed. All right, so any kind of power assist, whether it's brake, steering, or whatever, has to know when the power assist is necessary. And like I say, I already said that again. But this is a different picture, see. I'd already talked about that little stuff up there. Now this is what you see. How many of you guys have ever looked under a car and seen a wet accordion boot? That is a leak. There's not supposed to be any oil in that accordion boot. Now, one time, Mike Moore, that runs that tire store over at Enterprise, a good friend of mine, I grew up with him, he said that this guy kept pouring power steering fluid in his car, couldn't figure out where it was going. And when he got up out of the car and looked at it, this thing here was swelled up like a balloon. Because it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, it was holding the fluid, it wasn't leaking on the ground anymore. But it was all going in here, and eventually it was going to go boom, and it just throw fluid all over the place. It swell up the balloon. That doesn't happen a lot, but anytime you see one of these that's wet like that, it's time to put a rack in it. Now, when I was at the Mazda dealer, we used to have to rebuild them steering racks, and that's a kind of a drag. And I mean, it's doable, but it's a whole lot more cost effective just to get a rack from a parts store, put it on there, and send the other rack back, you know, and let them rebuild it. Power steering pressure lines will leak. You ever seen a power steering pressure line leak? You ever see how you turn the wheel, all of a sudden it's squirting fluid everywhere? It can leak right there where the line's put together. It can basically, there are some of these lines, and this is something else I wanted to mention too. I don't know if you ever seen, the power steering lines connects to the steering gear, which is bolted to the, either to the H-frame under the car or to the frame or something like that. The power steering pump is where? Where's the power steering pump mounted?
In the engine compartment?
Mounted on the engine, right? Okay, so what does the engine do when you're torquing and giving it gas? Moving. Because it's moving, you've got to have a flexible line going from the pump. That makes all the sense in the world when you think about it. flexible, even on your brakes, when you're turning your wheels, you got a flexible hose going to the front, right? Okay, so they got this flexible line. See, we see all that stuff they've engineered, we don't think nothing about it. We just put it back like it was. But anyway, if they've got some that have got a little sealed, hinged metal part in there that gives that little bit of movement. And with all due respect, this stuff was made in China. This friend of mine said he bought a power steering line that was made in China, and he put it on there. What is the trouble? Put it on there. So sometimes these power steering lines are a pain to change, but you'll get a worksheet on that. You'll get to change the power steering lines. You know, I got crowfoot and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, he said the first time he turned the wheel, it blew apart in that joint. The first time he turned the wheel, it popped apart and fluid goes over. And so he basically had to get one from the dealer, you know, which was the first one he bought from the parts store. And there was another Chinese part I'm going to talk about in a minute. You ever go, like the idler arm on some of these pickup trucks is the one that carries the other part of the parallelogram steering. In other words, the center link connects to the pitman arm and the idler arm. The idler arm is just basically carrying the link on the other side. But you can, those things will wear out and get to where the, you know, when you turn the wheel, they do this and the, you know, it feels like you got slop there. You can buy one of those in this cheap brand from the local parts store for $17, but it lasts about 2 weeks and is loose again. But if you buy a good one, you're gonna pay 50 to 75 bucks for it. But if I'm buying steering parts, think about that. You don't want no cheap steering parts. You know, whenever I can talk a customer into it, I'm gonna give them a TRW or a Moog instead of some cheap junk parts. They look the same if you hold them side by side.
They're not.
They're not the same. The quality's not there on some of that other stuff. You get what you pay for it. All right, so power steering pressure lines can leak. You usually turn the wheel. Leak gets worse really fast when you do that. Power steering pump seals, you see this where it's coming from behind that pulley? The seal where that shaft's coming out of the pump can leak too. And whenever you can, use power steering fluid whenever you can. You know, it's the best way to go. If you're in a bind and you ain't got nothing else, you can pour some transmission fluid in there and it'll usually be all right. Although sometimes, you know, some people claim it attacks seals. But I mean, for eons, you know, and when I was working at the gas station and for all the way up into the 80s, I would use automatic transmission fluid for power steering. And, you know, I hadn't heard anybody, you know, raise any red flags about that, but somebody might now that this is going to go on YouTube. Stubborn leaks can be located with dye and a black light. We've done this here. This is us right here fixing up, you know, looking at power steering leak. And we actually had to replace the rack on one is what happened. And she said, well, I'm still seeing a leak here. Of course, the leak was really bad before it was coming out of those boots. But when we poured this in and ran it back and forth, you know, you can basically use the black light and you can see where the leak is coming from a lot better. This is not the best picture in the world for that, but it was coming from around where the lines went into the pump. That's what it was, and we had to basically get some seals to reseal the lines going into the pump. All right. So, all right, these here power steering lines are bent a certain way. Now you might, this rubber hose here, like I was talking about earlier, but they've got a certain bend to them. One of these is a return line, and one of them is a pressure line. Pressure line ain't got a lot of, I mean, pressure line's got a lot of pressure on the return line, really doesn't. But whenever you're doing those, if you've ever put a brake line back in or a power steering pressure line back in, you gotta make sure you jiggle that line until you're sure that you got that thing started. Because I have actually had people that would pull the rack off of the Ranger and put it back on, and it had aluminum rack, and they would get frustrated trying to start the lines because, you know, you got to wiggle the line. Like if you're just putting a bolt in a hole, you keep moving it around so it's going straight in there. But if that line's holding it off a little bit, define that, identify that problem. Because if you just say, well, I'm just going to go ahead and force this thing in here with a wrench, it wipes out the threads and then you got to replace the part. The shop owner doesn't like that. If you do that to a master cylinder, it's $400, or if you do it with a power steering rack. I mean, so make darn sure that you're getting that thing started straight. That's the trickiest part about putting those back. Taking them out is easy. Putting them back, you know, that line is supposed to be bent just exactly like it ought to be, but you got to have a feel for that, develop a feel for it. And all that. And also, obviously, getting a wrench on that one right there might be tricky on some of the other ones, you know. All right, see that wrench right there? That's a crowfoot. It goes on the end of of an extension, and I got a whole set of those in a nice little red box over there. It's got all different sizes in them. When you're taking a power steering line off, you notice how these flare nut wrenches are made, where they're gripping the thing just like a box end. Because a lot of times if you try to stick a regular open end wrench on one of those, you'll start to egg shape it, and it'll destroy it where you can't, it's really hard to get it off. So anytime you're pulling a brake line or a power steering line, use a crowfoot or one of these tubing wrenches. We got those in all different sizes around there. And that's pretty important. But sometimes you cannot get on this with that one. See how tricky that is to get to? Well, whenever you can get on it, if you break it loose, and most of the time once you break them loose, you can just about screw them out there with your finger. Breaking them loose is the key. And you gotta have, and putting them back in, you gotta tighten it up the right way too. Now, the seals on the lines are important. Some of them got plain old O-rings, that's like a Lexus right there. But on these Fords, you might notice that when you take this fitting off, it has a nylon ring, and sometimes that nylon ring is all, trashed when you take it off. It wasn't leaking before, but if you put it back on there, it's gonna leak. And they sell these at parts stores, they don't cost very much. But these are really tough white, this is not like an O-ring, but it goes on there like that. See, it goes in this spot right here, but you gotta work it over them threads, and it's a little tricky to do. Once you get it on there, you're good to go. It's gotta be exactly the right size, and all that. So you make sure, if for whatever reason, if you have to take them power steering lines loose from the pump, you look at those, and if they don't look really good and serviceable, you'll make yourself a leak going back on there. Now this isn't particularly dangerous other than the fact that it's just gonna make a leak. It's not like you're gonna have a bomb that went off or something if you didn't do it right, but if you got a leak, it comes back. Now, this is a good story. This guy comes in here with this Lexus SC300, or I think it's a 93 model, and it's got a power steering leak, and the power steering hose, pressure hose is leaking. And so I called to find out how much a power steering pressure hose is, and it's $450 for a power steering pressure hose, right? And so what I did was, I says, let me just take this power steering pressure hose off and send it to the parts store. And the guy, he basically can cut the metal parts of this line out and put new rubber on it. You ever seen that happen before? If you've been around, I mean, they got a lot of times they can do that with AC lines, they can do it with, sometimes they can do it with AC lines, sometimes they do it with, and so he goes over and he cuts the metal parts off the line. And then he finds out that his ferrules won't fit, because Lexus made the outside of those lines 11 millimeter and his ferrules are 10 millimeter. So now the line's really thick, but what is he trying to do? He's trying to put it on the grinder and grind them down so the ferrule will fit on. Oh, this is a disaster, because ain't no way it's going to seal. You see what I'm saying? And so I told him, I said, stop all that and just send me the stuff over here. And I said, then we'll make those work. And so I cut the lines off with a tubing cutter, the part that he had botched up with a grinder. And then I sanded them off with crocus cloth until they were 10 millimeter. And then I put the ferrule on there and tightened them up. And we built the guy a power steering line for almost no money. And it never did leak again as far as I can tell. But this is what the power steering line looked like. Now, and this is a little, there you can't hardly see it, but there's a ferrule right there. And that's the fitting the guy was going to put on there. See, that you can crimp that onto a fresh hose. A lot of times, or you'd actually have a hose made on there. But the simple fact is, he cut it there, and he cut it there, and he was going to replace the part that was leaking. But it turned out this was an 11 millimeter pipe instead of a 10, which was morphodite, peculiar, and all that. So we got it down to 10 millimeters, so the ferrules and nuts would work and not leak, and we fixed it like that. Now, here's your pulleys. Now this right here, pay attention to this. This right here, I got this price and everything in that picture from Walmart's website. But you can go on Amazon, you can go other places, and you can buy a power steering pump puller tool for about $20. They don't cost that much. If you buy one from the parts house, you may pay 60 bucks for it. But the long and the short of it is, you gotta have that to get the power steering pump pulley off. Really important. Okay, and it requires a special puller on just about every pump out there. Ever so often you'll see one that you break a nut loose and pull it off. That ain't usually the way it is. I tell you something else too. Sometimes you'll have to pull a power steering pump pulley off in order to take some other pieces off to get to the timing chain or something, or belt. I mean, whenever you, be ready for that, you know, and I've got some kits here that we can use, and I've got a worksheet that I give you guys where you're gonna take a power steering pump, put it in the vise, you're gonna pull the pulley off and put it back on. All right, now then, the point is, there's variability. Some pulleys require more effort than others to remove. And I would be daresome to say that even with the best power steering pump puller we got, for some strange reason, trying to pull the pulley off that Ranger, you ain't gonna get it to move. I don't know why it's on there so dadgum tight, but it is. And sometimes you run into that. The vacuum pumps that they used to use to work with the doors in the dash on these Power Stroke diesels use the same kind of puller to pull them off. But they didn't fit as tight as the power steering pump. Here's something else you might think about. See how big that pulley is? That pulley's gonna be this big around. Why do they make a pulley so big when the alternator pulley is like this big?
It takes
More power to turn it. If you got a bigger pulley, it ain't gonna turn as fast, but you got more power, you got more belt surface traction on there and all that kind of thing. But always, don't be listening to me now. When you're pulling those off, always put grease on them threads. If you don't put grease on those threads, they will weld themselves together and you'll have two pieces of metal that will become one. I've seen that happen and it just destroys, ain't no way you'll ever get them back apart again. All right, this is a procedure for putting it back on. Now they have some of these Chinese made plastic pulleys. And Donnie was telling me about this plastic in here too. And it's just a little bit too small. And it won't go on there. So what you gotta do is take a brake cylinder hone and hone it out if you're gonna put them on there and make them work right. Not so terribly unusual. Pull it back flush, like that right there. If you don't have it flush, you'll have a misalignment issue. Like that, special tools are available. They got these laser things you can put on there to see if it's lined up right and all that. Put it in the middle of one pulley. This is the alignment thing. Pulley run out, which would be when it's doing this. You got, if it's bent or if it's parallel, you know, like it would be, if it's pushed on too far, not far enough, bent or damaged that way too. That's a little illustration from Gates. Remember the screen, this screen right here in the bottom of this, you'll have to pull this off, pour the fluid out of it, look down in there with your flashlight. If you see that's all clogged up. Willie, the guy that was here that one time at F-150, he drove it for a long time with his power steering just winding up a storm. And we finally discovered that the screen was clogged. You remember Willie? Weren't you here when he was here? He's the one that put the engine in that dark blue Crown Victoria. But anyway, the long and the short of it is, he had to put a power steering pump on his truck because he let it run too long with that screen stopped up, because it wiped out the pump. Okay. And if you still have power steering noise after you clean that thing, you may have a pump. Usually when you turn the wheel back and forth from lock to lock, when the wheel raised off the floor, it'll bleed air from the system. Okay? And when that doesn't work, there's a procedure that does. All right? Let's see if this video will play. Turning the wheel back and forth. This is a GM procedure, and I've also fixed some cars that other shops have needed power steering pumps like this. Taking care of this noise. All we need to do is use this special tool to try to evacuate the air. Power steering cap off. And this plug right here is like for an old 350. And it just so happens that it fits in there. Down in there, and it's a soft rubber plug that you can get it to go. Work it down in the. There you go. Work it down in there like that. And then you're going to put engine vacuum on that with the car back, with the vehicle jacked up off the ground, you turn it back and forth. Any air. Okay. As long as we're putting a vacuum on this clear line right here, we're going to actually force the air to come out of it and go somewhere else. Wheels raised. Turn it stop to stop. And see, I've got this clear line going through this little bottle here for engine vacuum. That engine vacuum is pulling that air out of there. You'd be surprised how fast you can get the air out of one vacuuming it out like that. Use an engine vacuum to do it. Now the GM procedure says to use a hand vacuum pump. All right, that's enough of that. Whining noises, and this is about the last time. They're not always the power steering pump. Sometimes something as simple as a belt can cause it. If you see a belt like one of these real shiny ones like this, that's made by that one company, And whenever you turn it, it's gonna sound like a bad bearing or a bad power steering pump or something like that. When all you actually have to do is get rid of that belt and put a regular belt on there, all that noise will go away. Seen that 2 or 3 times. All right, everybody happy?